Hey everyone, it's Jill the Wandering Stamper. I hope you're having a fabulous afternoon. Today we are making one of those wonderful flip-flap shutter cards. I love making these and I haven't made one for a while, but there are two new online exclusives that came out July 1st. One is the Painterly Pears, which I absolutely fell in love with because we haven't had pears in a while, and the paper is just so stunningly beautiful that I immediately had to pre-order it. I played around with it and I think it's perfect for this card. So that's what we're making today. But we're also going to be using the Floral Charm Suite on another sample, and I will be doing some cards later on using that suite, but I wanted to show you that card as well in that new online exclusive suite. And then we're also going to show you a sample with the beautiful gallery suite that's a current annual catalog suite of products. So I'm taking 3 suites and I'm going to make the same card with each suite today to show you, and there's going to be a little spin on each card so I can show you how versatile this fun fold is. The shutter can be done a couple of different ways. The card itself can be done a couple of different ways. I think you're going to like this one. So let me take a moment to turn down the camera and we'll get started. Thanks so much for joining me today. Here is what we're using today. Oh my gosh, these products in the suite are so pretty. I couldn't wait to get them in the mail. It comes with the suite. This is again called the Painterly Pears Suite. The suite comes with this beautiful mossy meadow and gold ribbon. I love this ribbon. It's so shimmery. This would be really good during the holidays for your Christmas cards too. So you may want to get a few of these in preparation for the holidays because this is an online exclusive and eventually it will disappear. But oh my gosh, this is so pretty. So we'll be using some of that ribbon. These are the embellishments that come in the suite. There's some green, I think this is mossy meadow or old olive. They kind of have both because they're sort of iridescent. But there is green, there's yellow, so that could be Daffodil Delight or Darling Duckling. I believe it's Darling Duckling. And then you've got some sort of Secret Sea, but again, it picks up so many different colors because it is iridescent. So these are really, really pretty. And then we're going to be using some Mossy Meadow and Old Olive ink. And I also pulled the Mossy Meadow and Pecan Pie Stampin' Blends because we're going to be doing some stamping and coloring. And then these are the stamps. Look how cute these are. So you've got a couple of different options for pears. It's got some great greetings and sentiments. And some little background splashes to add some flair to your cards. And then here are the dies. The dies are great because not only do you have the pears and the leaves, you have some tags, you have this funky little piece here to decorate your cards, you've got some flowers. I mean, there's lots and lots of stuff here, but these dies actually also die cut this sheet of paper. So as you can see, I've been playing lots and lots. There's a die for the big pears, there's a die for the little pears, there's a die for these leaves here and stems, and then there's also a die that cuts out these little clusters of 3 flowers. So, and don't disregard the stuff on the edges because you can use this on the top of your card, so you can still die cut and use these on the edges of your card. So don't overlook those little pieces. And a lot of time, if I'm going to be cutting this out and this out, I'll go ahead and die cut this and put it in my stamp box so that I'll have it later on. But this actually attaches to the big pear. So there's lots of options. And of course, the back of the paper has some pretty designs. So that is the stamps and the dies that we're using. But look at this paper. I fell in love with the paper. You get all of these shades, so we have front and back. Look how pretty this is. I mean, it's just gorgeous. And then here's another set. Beautiful. I just love this paper. It's just so pretty. And it's not really, it's not all about pink. Like so many flowers are very, very feminine. These are actually greens and yellows. There's a little bit of pink, but it's lots of greens and yellows. So it's kind of a different twist on that. So I love this plaid, and we're going to be using a remnant of this paper in the card. And then of course there's another sheet of that paper that you can die cut from. This petal pink is really, really pretty, or calypso coral. believe this is, I think it's both Calypso Coral and Petal Pink. And then look, this is great for scrapbooking or using portions of it on your card. It's also great for the inside of a card because you've got room to write. So love that. And then here's another plaid, and that's in Secret Sea and probably Mossy Meadow or Old Olive. It's kind of hard to tell. But we're going to be using the other side of that. And then we have finally this piece. So really, really pretty paper. So if you get a chance, check that online exclusive out. All right, so let me show you what we're making. We're going to make a flip flap shutter card, and this is a card that opens just like this. And it can stand alone, but I actually made it like a traditional card, but I am gonna show you some different ways you can make this card, so it doesn't have to just be this way. But loving this paper, and this is a great card to show off that beautiful designer series paper. So let's get started. It is not difficult. You just wanna, follow your steps and you'll be able to make one of these no problem. So we're going to start out with Secret Sea for our base, and I'm going to cut that at 5.5 by 8.5. So there's nothing new about this. We've got 5.5 by 8.5. We're going to set this aside, and then we're going to score it at 4.25. Okay, so that's your typical card. Nothing fancy about that. I'm going to go ahead and give it a press with the bone folder, and I'm going to set that aside. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut another piece of Secret Sea, and we're going to cut that 4.25 by 5.5. So it's going to be the same size as the front of the card. So 4.25, and this should be 5.5, and it is. So we're going to set that aside. And then we're going to decide, you want to decide what your frame is going to be for the front of your card. So I decided we're going to do the exact same card. I'm going to do this Daffodil Delight shade. I really like that. So we're going to cut that again, 4.25 by 5.5. So I'm just going to cut it like this. I've already ordered another pack of this paper because I know I'm going to use it up. 4.25 by 5.5. All right, so you're always going to want to cut one with cardstock and one with designer series paper, both 4.25 by 5.5. Okay, now this is just a hair too big, I can see. I'm going to give this just a tiny little trim. Okay. Don't want it hanging off. All right, so these are going to fit perfectly over each other. All right, so we're going to set that aside. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to want our flaps to create our mechanism. Now I actually have, I believe, 3 cut already, so I'll use those. But you're going to have 3 pieces that are 2 by 4.25. I just want to make sure these are right. They are. For some reason, I cut an extra set when I was doing my samples, so that's what those are. So 3 pieces of Secret Sea that are 2 inches by 4.25. All right. Now, when you have those 3, we're going to do some scoring on them. So pay attention to this part. This is important. So I like to start on my short edge. We're only going to score 3 sides of this. All right. Actually, I like to start on my long edge. So with the paper on my long edge, I'm going to put it at the 1/2 inch mark. We're going to be scoring 1/2 inches on only 3 sides of these strips, okay? So we've got a 1/2 inch here, and then I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise, and I'm going to do a 1/2 inch on the long side. And then I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise, and I'm going to do one more 1/2 inch score line like that. We're not going to score this side, okay? So you only want one of the long sides scored. The other one is not going to be scored. But what we are going to do is put that on the trimmer, and we're only going to score that top 1/2 inch, okay? So I'm going to do the top 1/2 inch and the bottom 1/2 inch, okay? So what that looks like, and I know you can't see it, is we put it on our cutter. We started out here. We did a 1/2 inch score line right here. We rotated it and did a 1/2 inch score line. We rotated it, did a 1/2 inch score line, and rotated it, and we only scored from the top to the 1/2 inch and then the 1/2 inch to the bottom. Okay, you do not score this part. All right, so we're going to do this real quick for the other two. So we're going to set these aside, and then I'll show you what to do with those in a moment. All right, now we're going to go ahead and figure out, we want our patterns for our card, okay? So I've chosen this pattern for the front and this pattern for the inside, all right? Now, you could do these both at the same time. I like to do them separately because I want to make sure my pairs are facing the way I want them to face. So what I do is I start out by cutting one. So this card, you want to make sure you cut your card the right way. So you can make this card this way, and you would be arranging your paper a different way. So we're cutting this way, so we want to make sure our picture is landscape, all right, if that makes sense. So this is going to be 3 1/8 by, let me make sure I'm doing this right. So we're going to do 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. So I want it to be wider than it is tall. So I'm going to do the 4 1/8, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut this whole piece. And then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to do 3 1/8. Okay, so 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. So what we've got is this little scene with these pairs. So now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and do some cutting. We're going to cut 3 flaps that are 1 3/8 by 3 1/8. So we're going to put this on our cutter, and this is sort of like a puzzle. That's why I wanted it done this way. So 1 3/8, and then we're going to do 1 3/8, which leaves 1 3/8. So these should all match up perfectly. Okay, and they do. So I like to just lay mine just off camera in the order that they go, so our little puzzle works. All right, now I want to also have a design on the back of my flaps. So see, I have that yellow there. So that's the next piece that's going to go. Now I am pretty sure I can use this. So let's go ahead and put this together. So this was our this was our framed piece. So we had a piece of cardstock that was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and we had a piece of designer series paper, the same 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, okay? And this is going to create this frame right here. So the way you do that is we're going to go ahead and flip it over, and we're only going to put our liquid glue around the edge because we're going to be cutting out the middle. So I am just putting my liquid glue just around here. We're going to be cutting a 1/2 inch border all the way around. Okay, so we want to keep that glue where it's going to stay in that 1/2 inch border. So now I'm just going to line it back up over my cardstock. All right, just like so. So that is all glued together. So now we're going to grab our paper cutter, and the reason I'm doing that is so I can use this for the middle of my card. Okay, it'll make sense in just a moment. So I'm going to put this on my cutter. Remember, the cutter has like 1.5 inches of measurement over here, so that's why I'm doing it over here. So I have it on the 1/2 inch line. Now I know that this is 5 1/2 inches, so I'm going to put my cutter at the 1/2 inch line, and I'm going to give it a press, and I'm going to bring it down to the 5 inch line. Okay, because it's 5 1/2 inches long, we want to stop at the 5 inch line, so we have our 1/2 inch at the bottom. Now I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line it up at a 1/2 inch, and now I'm going to bring it down to 3 3/4 because this is a 4 1/4, and we want to leave a 1/2 inch. All right, so I'm going to bring it down to 3 3/4, and oh, look at this. I did not put it on the right spot. We can fix that. 1/2 inch, bring it down to 3 3/4. It's okay, I think it'll be fine. And we're gonna do it counterclockwise. We're gonna bring it back up and we're gonna put that on the 1/2 inch mark again. And we're gonna bring it down to the 5 inch mark. And then we're going to turn it, put it back on that 1/2 inch mark. We're gonna bring the cutter back up to the 1/2 inch mark, push it down, and then bring it to that 3 3/4 mark. Okay, so when you have all 4 sides done, look, the middle pops out. Now I did it wrong right here, so we got that a little extra piece, but there's your frame and it's already glued down. All right, so now what we have left is this middle piece, and what I'm hoping is we can cut this to 3 1/8. And now we can make our back flaps. So we need 3 pieces of 1 3/8. Now it may not work out because I made that little boo-boo, but let's see if we're lucky. So 1 3/8, 1 3/8, and that actually worked. Okay, my little boo-boo didn't hurt us. 1 3/8. All right. So I was able to use that scrap from the middle for my inside pieces. So we're going to set these aside. So I just wanted to show you that trick. Now you may decide you don't want to use the middle for something else, and then you just have a really great scrap for some other piece. Okay, so now the third piece we need is we need our pieces that go in the back right here. All right, so we've got our front cut. We've got our yellow pieces here cut. So now we want to cut this petal pink piece back here. All right, so the dimensions for that are going to be 4 by 5 1/4. Let me make sure I did that right. 4 1/8, sorry. We're going to cut 4 1/8. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm trying to decide how I want to do this. So this is going to be these are all going to be 4 1/8 tall. All right, so I'm just going to cut, let's do 4 1/8 by, we know our card is no bigger than 5 1/2, so I'm just going to cut this down to 5 1/2. I'm going to put this, and I'm just cutting it just so I don't I don't want any more scraps than I have to have, right? I'm going to move this out of the way. All right, so we want these measurements. So we've got our 4 1/8 for our height. Just like so. All right, and I want my card to be oriented like this. So now I'm going to be cutting several pieces from this. So I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to keep them in order because I want this sort of like a puzzle. So 3/8 inch. All right, we're going to set that aside, and then we're going to do 2 pieces that are 1 3/8. And don't forget, I will have all of this on my blog, so you can just go right there and know exactly what you need to cut. So our second piece that's 1 3/8, and I'm just laying them out in order. And then our last piece is going to be 1 7/8. Okay, and this is a scrap right here. Put that aside. All right, and then we're going to want a piece of basic white for our inside. So I'm going to do 4 by 5 1/4. Just go ahead and cut that so we can get this cutter out of the way and start putting this together. This is not a difficult card to make. You just have to get all your cutting done. All right. So let's go ahead and grab those 3 panels that we scored. This is super easy, but it's very important that you do it the right way. So I'm going to grab my scissors, and so remember we scored, right? And then we have our two little score lines here, and then we have one long score line here. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting up to my first score line, and then I'm going to notch just the tab to the right of this one. You don't want to notch this rectangle because we're going to be putting a panel of paper on it. All right, so we're only going to cut the corner of the score line so basically we're snipping at the 1/2 inch score lines, just like that. So there's one, and then I'm going to go to this other side. I'm going to trim it. I'm going to notch it right here, and then I'm going to turn it. It's super easy to do. There's nothing exact about it. You just pull that little strip out. All right, let me get a piece of white so you can see. So this is what you're ending up with, okay? So you notice I only notched the panels on the edge. I left this middle perfectly straight because we're going to be putting a piece of Designer Series paper on this. We don't want this notched out because it won't fit. All right, so you only notch these pieces. All right, so let's go ahead and do it for the other two pieces real quick. So there we go. All right, let's get rid of all these little scraps. Okay, so now once you have that done, you want to have the side that has your score line that goes all the way across, you want those all to the left, okay? So this is the side that has a score line that goes from the top to the bottom. So that's how those three go because they're going to open like that, okay? So on the front of our boxes, we're going to be gluing these three pieces on, okay? And this is why we didn't notch this rectangle, because we want that little border, all right? And then our scored sections are all on the left. So once you have that laid out right, you can go ahead and grab your adhesive and glue this down. And I also do it this way so that I make sure it creates a picture when it's all together. It's sort of like a puzzle. We don't want to get our puzzle pieces mixed up. So there's a very narrow margin. So you're just going to lay this down and make sure your margins are nice and straight, just like so. And then we're going to do the next piece. And I'm just putting that down on there, and then I'm just going to make sure it's all nice and straight. Okay, so that looks good. So when those are together, they're going to create that picture, see? All right, so now that that's done, we're just going to flip them over in the same order, just like so. And now we're going to add our other pieces to the back, okay? Just like so, okay? So now we can flip these back over, just like that. All right, so now it's time to put them onto our card base. So this is our card base. So what I like to do is I like to flip both of the little tabs in upwards so they go in just like so. This one got crooked. There you go. And just make sure they're straight. All right. And then, make sure I didn't mess it up. This one's going to go in. And for this one, I use the bone folder. Okay. It's just like that. All right. Now, you don't have to fold this or fold this score line. It's fine just like this. All right. So I'm going to do the next one. I'm going to fold these two in. And then this one goes down like a mountain fold. And I'm going to press it. All right. And I'm doing this in order because I don't want to mess up the order of my pieces. Now this one's really easy to put together, but if you're using a really busy panel of paper or a scene, you don't want to get your scene accidentally messed up, right? And get it out of order. So I like to keep everything in order. All right, so there's our third piece. All right, so working from left to right, I'm going to grab this first piece. All right, and I'm going to put liquid glue on this panel, and this panel. So this is the one that we folded. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little liquid glue here, a little liquid glue here, and now I'm going to lay it down onto our cardstock up, and I'm going to butt it up against the edge, just like so. And just make sure everything is even, okay? So it should not be protruding from the top of your card. Everything should fit here, here, and here, all right? So that is glued down, and so these pop up just fine. Now, I actually folded them the wrong way. They were supposed to be folded this way, but it's fine. So I'm gonna take my bone folder and just give it one more crease. All right, now, these are gonna ultimately want to be folded upwards, just like this, like we folded them before. So I just kind of give it a press and then go on to the next one. So this next one, we're gonna flip it over, and we're only going to put our glue on this panel, this long panel, and this little panel, okay? Now, when we lay this one down, we're going to butt this edge up to our score line, okay? So that's kind of like your guide on exactly where to place this. So you're going to put it up against your score line, and we're going to press our little tabs down. All right, so there's our second piece. See? And because we pressed it up against the score line, everything's all nicely lined up. All right, we're going to push these little guys in, and we're going to go to our third piece. All right, we're going to put glue on this top piece, on this long middle, and right here on the bottom tab. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to butt this up against the score line and line it up with the bottom edge of our paper, which should also line it up with the top edge perfectly. All right, and give everything a press. Make sure everything's lined up, nothing sticking over. So now we have our three flaps, okay? So those are done. So the next thing we want to do is grab those 4 pieces we cut earlier that go inside, and we're going to start gluing those pieces down. Super simple, right? You just have a lot of cutting in the beginning, and once you get all those pieces cut, the rest is a breeze. So we're going to lay this down, and see, these layers are going to cover up all of those little tabs that we cut. So you're not even going to see them. All right, so there's the first one. Now we're going to open it up, and the second one's going to go here. And you just want to give everybody the same height so everything matches up nicely. So I'm kind of looking at this one, making sure this one looks the same. Make sure they're straight. That one's just a little crooked. Move it over a little, which is the beauty of liquid glue. Okay, when that looks good, I've still got that crooked. There we go. That one looks good. We're going to move on to the next one. And I'm just going to pop this down, looking at the one I just finished to make sure they all match. Get that nice and straight and give it a good press. So there's 3, and now we have the largest one goes right here. So now I'm just going to lay this in here with the same height on the margin. So everything looks good and matches up. And just adjust it if you need. And there you go. So there's our inside. See, that wasn't hard at all. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to add our frame. So you want to make sure all of these little tabs are folded the same direction. All right, and now we're going to put a little bit of liquid glue on each one of these. And you don't want them folding back on themselves. That's why we burnish them really well with the bone folder, so that they stay folded out. All right, so there's that one. Now I'm just going through with my glue press and putting glue on every single one of these. So there's 6 altogether. Once you've got that on there, you're going to grab your frame. And I like to start over here. And I'm lining my frame up with the edge of my card. And then once that's lined up, you just press everything down and then just adjust it so all of your corners are all lined up. All right, and then you can flip it over and just give it a good rub with that bone folder so it's all glued down. And look at this. Ta-da! So there. That wasn't hard, right? Beautiful. All right, so now we can start decorating. So let's go ahead and work on the inside. Let me grab my scratch paper. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to add these cute little pears because we've got pears on the outside. Let's have some pears on the inside. So I've grabbed this stamp and I'm gonna, since I'm gonna use my blends, I'm gonna go ahead and do it in Tuxedo Black Memento ink. And I'm just gonna pop those right there, just like so. And clean that off because a messy stamp in my area is a disaster waiting to happen. All right, so now that that's done, I'm going to close. Actually, while we have this out, let's go ahead and put a message inside. So I'm going to put hello friend on the front. So I'm going to put a good friend is a gift. And I'm just going to do it in basic black. And I think I'm going to do it right next to my pears. Like that. Okay, I typically put them here, but I'm going to put them somewhere different this time. I think it'll be pretty. All right, now that that's done, I'm going to close up this Tuxedo Black and we're going to grab our Old Olive. And the little fill, I love this filling for the pears because it's textured, so it automatically, it's one of those like stamps that automatically puts all the detail in there, and I really like that. So I'm just gonna ink it up. Look how pretty that is. All right, it just looks very artistic. So we've got that cleaned off. Now I'm gonna take my Stampin' Blends and I'm gonna go ahead with the light Mossy Meadow. And I'm just going to color in my leaves. Let's go to the other side. Look, I've got Stampin' Blends on my fingernails already. So we're just going to quickly color these in with light Mossy Meadow. And I like the Mossy Meadow because it's slightly darker than the Old Olive. So the leaves are kind of set off from the pears that way. Super easy to color. Okay, now if you wanted to add extra depth sometimes, and especially when I don't match up my outline perfectly, I go ahead and take that Mossy Meadow and add a little bit to the pears to pull in another shade of green, and I think it looks kind of cool that way. So you can do that, it's an option. The blends are really neat. So that kind of added that a little bit of shading. All right, so while that's drying, I'm going to grab that pecan pie, and I'm just going to do my stems. And I'm using the brush tip because the stems are super thin. You can just barely touch it with the brush tip. That way you don't go out of the lines. So that's all you need. All right, so now that I've given those leaves a second, I'm going to go ahead with the dark and just give it a little bit of depth here. And then we're going to give that a second. You want to give your Stampin' Blends a little bit of time to evaporate. I'm in a very dry climate, so it doesn't take long. And now I'm just going back over with the light just to clean up those harsh lines, and then it will look nice and shaded that way. If you don't use blends, consider them. They're so fun to color with because they make you look like you can color really well. Okay, that's it for the inside. So we're going to go ahead and grab our card base, and I'm going to flip this over and add my liquid glue. I love this glue press. I'm not an affiliate with My Sweet Petunia. I should be, as much as I talk about their glue press, but I love this. I love this glue press. All right, so just popping this in the middle. Make sure all of my borders are together. Look, very pretty. All right, so now all we have left is decorating. So before you came on, I cut out 2 pieces of these flowers, and look, this flower was at the top of the page, so when I put them together, I'm just going to hide that little straight edge, no problem. And then I also die cut this pear, so cute. And then I also stamped and die cut friend. All right, so those pieces are done, but what I do want to do is stamp hello on this card because I'm going to put the friend next to it. And I probably should have done this before I attached it to the card, but it works perfectly fine. So I'm just going to stamp hello right there, just like so. It's such a simple stamp, I'm not too worried about it. All right, we're going to close up this Memento ink and see now we have friend that can go right next to it. So I'm going to grab some dimensionals. I think this one I will need minis. So we're grabbing our mini dimensionals. I'm going to pop a few of those. You could just glue this on if you wanted to. This is a bulkier card, but I'm going to use the dimensionals. I don't mind paying a little extra for that postage for this card because it's so pretty. All right, let me get these little papers out of the way. Otherwise, they'll be floating around this RV. So now I'm just going to pop this on, just like so. All right. Now we've got our pear. So one thing you want to think about when you're putting pieces onto your card is you want to make sure your card still is going to shutter open without it being in the way. So if I were to put it over here, this flap would hit it. So I'm going to put my pears over here because I know that they're not going to be bothered. So I'm only going to be putting glue on this portion of this piece. So I'm going to flip it over and just put a little glue here. And then of course I don't want it to go on the outside of my card because we want it to fit in an envelope. So I'm going to pop it in there. And then you can actually, close up your card, you can actually, if you need to, open this card up. If you get any glue, like I got a little bit of glue outside my boundary, so I'm just going to open it all the way like this, and I'm going to wipe it off with my finger and then use my little eraser tool and erase that little bit of glue off so nothing sticks, and then you can just close it back up. All right, so that opens perfectly. All right, so then I also have, let's get this paper out of the way. So I also have these little flowers. So I want to put these, I think over here, like this, have a little cluster. And I actually might do it this way since I have that straight edge because I cut this from the edge of the paper because why waste it, right? So I'm going to put these like right here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this piece on first, and I'm going to have it run into the pears a little bit, or you could have it go under. I think I'm going to have it go right up to the edge of the pear. So you just want to look and see where you need to have your glue. And you can always add a little more glue under the edge if you need to. So I'm going to pop this, I think, right here, just like so. And then this other piece, I think I'll just put it right there. So I just want to have a little cluster of these flowers on there. And you could actually add some dimensionals to this second layer and pop them up if you want. I'm just going to glue them down. I think we have enough on the card. So we'll put it right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of glue right here. Make sure that doesn't lift. Just hold it for a second. So that is looking good. Look at that. All right. So let's go ahead and embellish. So we've got these, and then we also have this gorgeous ribbon. So I think, so let me show you how I ended up doing this piece because that was kind of a happy accident. So what I did was I took I was going to tie a bow, but I kind of wanted it to wrap around the edge of the card. So what I did, let me bend this the right way, is I made a loop like this, and then I just tied it like so, just like this. And when I did that, it naturally makes an L shape, which I thought was perfect. So I just trim it right there. And see, because it makes that little L shape, it's perfect for using on your card. So where do we want to put it? Should we put it here? Or should we put it here? I'm going to put this one at the top, I think. The other one I put at the bottom, but I think I'm going to put it at the top. I was trying to figure out how to, I didn't really want to put a bow, and I felt like that was kind of a fun way to do it. So I'm going to use 2 glue dots because I want this to be nice and strong. Whoops. I'm going to add that second glue dot. And we're just going to pop it right there in the corner. So see how it follows the shape of the card. So I thought that was really nice. And you can even add another glue dot here if you wanted to. That looks good. All right, and let's use Secret C to embellish. So I'm grabbing the Secret C ones. And let's see. Let's put one here. I love how sparkly these are because they pick up all of the colors. Even though they're predominantly Secret C, they kind of pick up all the colors in your card. So it's super pretty. And let's use a big one. I'm having a heck of a time. I'm getting them off today. There we go. And we'll put one right here. Well, let's move it over a little. Put it, oh my goodness, I am having a hard time. Put it over here. Okay, there we go, I like that. All right, let's get this out of the way and we'll see what we have. So here's our card. It says, "Hello friend." Look how pretty this is when it opens. And it will stand up on its own, but we did create a second card inside. So it will sit up on the counter like this. So pretty. It fits in the envelope fine. And when you open it up, it says, "A friend is a gift." And I love the Secret C with this yellow. So pretty. So it's almost identical to this card. I used the Darling Duckling gems here and just put them on the flowers. Everything else is the same, and I just added the bow to the bottom. So that one's very similar. So here is the card that I used with the Floral Charm Suite. Look how pretty. I made this one this direction. So it opens like this. Isn't that pretty? And I added this little flower, and then I added the happy birthday in the middle panel and added some leaves. Super pretty. And then I colored the flowers in with Wink of Stella to make them twinkle a little bit, and then added some embellishments on the front over the flowers. Now, there's no inside to this card. You flip it over and you can write on the back. So I just simply stamped one of the stamps there, colored it in, added some more Wink of Stella. Now, when I opened this card up, I realized I probably, because I have it opening up like this, it wouldn't stand on its own. So what I did is I glued the top portion of this piece to the top of the card, and then on the bottom of the card, I cut a 2.5-inch piece of cardstock, the same width of the space, and then I scored it in at the 1-inch mark, and then I scored it a 1/4 inch on each end, and I folded it and made this little stand. So it folds flat into an envelope, and then you just pop this out for it to stand. So that fixed that problem. So I think if it opens this way, it may have stood better, but it wasn't standing right. So that was my fix on that. Super simple to do, and I just used a piece of scrap cardstock to fix that. So there is card number 2. And then the last card, I used the beautiful gallery suite to create it. Look how pretty. And I did some stamping and some die cutting. I added a little ribbon here because sometimes it's not intuitive to pull. So they can pull that little tab, but look at this paper. Isn't it pretty? So you've got your scene, your rustic scene on the front, and then these flowers just go so well. And this is from that beautiful gallery designer series paper. So pretty. And then you just flip it over and it says, "You've been on my mind." So it says hello right there. I stamped right on one of the panels, "You've been on my mind." So there are 3 ways to do it, and this stands perfectly on its own. This one stands perfectly on its own, and this one stands perfectly on its own. So there are 3 ways to display the most gorgeous cards. There you go. That is the flap shutter card. All right, so don't forget there's a link below to my blog, and it will have all of the cutting and scoring dimensions listed that you need to know, as well as a list of all the products that I use to make each one of these 3 cards. If you don't already subscribe to my videos and you'd like to, please click on the link to subscribe and hit that bell to get a reminder of all my videos when they post. And if you're looking for a demonstrator to help you with all of your card creations, please consider me. I would love to be your demonstrator. I hope you have a fabulous day. Go make some cards for someone, because I know when they open their mailbox and get it, it will make their day very special. That's why we do this, because we love it so much and we love the gift of sharing special cards. I'm Jill the Wandering Stamper. I will see you next week. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.